Thank you very much. Very excited to be here. So, my name is Matt James. I'm lucky enough to serve as the CAO of Colossal Biosciences, and unfortunately for you all, the A does not stand for artificial intelligence. And so I'm the Chief Animal Officer at Colossal Biosciences, which means I am not an AI expert. In fact, I'm just more of an AI user, and I have the great fortune of managing an AI for conservation team as part of our diverse conservation portfolio at Colossal. To talk a little bit about, first of all, to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Colossal is really to start with a focus on what's happening in the natural world around us. For those of you that aren't aware, we are in the 6th mass extinction event of our Earth. We have more than 1 million species threatened with extinction, and we've seen more than a 70% decline in vertebrate populations since 1970, which is about the same time when the Epic Endangered Species Act was enforced. So despite our best efforts, we continue to fall further and further behind in this race against extinction. With that idea in mind, Colossal Biosciences launched in 2021 with this really ambitious mission of making extinction a thing of the past, which is a pretty bold statement, right? Extinction is a massive problem. It's really hard to overcome, and there's no silver bullet solution. However, we think of making extinction a thing of the past as not just a cute way of saying we can now reverse extinctions. We can now re-engineer species to bring them back from extinction, but we can also apply emerging technologies in order to prevent future extinctions, to keep species off of our proverbial to-do list. So since then, we've made a few waves. We've been really lucky. We've had a lot of great fortune in our fundraising campaigns. We've raised, through a Series C, we've raised more than $435 million, and our latest valuation put us at $10.2 billion, making us the fastest unicorn to ever grow in Texas, the first decacorn ever grown in Texas. So we're really proud of that. That's been an amazing growth. When I joined the company in 2021, there were about 15 of us that started that. Today, there's more than 165 employees and about 150 people in our network of advisors, sponsored research agreement, postdocs, things like that. So it's been an absolute whirlwind of 4 years, but we continue to kind of grow and take on new challenges. So this idea of de-extinction is really this idea that we can use emerging technologies like genetic engineering, high-quality reference genome creations. Using the power of AI, we can begin to determine the comparative genomics between a living species and an extinct species. We can then have AI help us determine which areas of the genome should be edited in order to edit a living species to most reflect that of the extinct species. So we can then put that species back in the wild to perform a function that's been lost within an ecosystem in order to help improve stability of degrading ecosystems, in order to help improve the viability of the species around our restored species. But we also have amazing capabilities of not just trying to bring species back from tomorrow, but try to create resilience in the species, or sorry, bring species back of yesterday, but try to create resilience in the species of tomorrow. Our world is changing faster than we can even document it, and understanding that species every day must be given new tools to adapt to the emerging damage that we continue to do to nature. So we also have the ability to engineer enhancements in species, help make them more resistant to things like climate change, emerging wildlife disease, toxins that are present on the landscape. All the while, we can also help sort of enhance their capabilities through things like genetic rescue, which is this idea of species that have gone through extreme population decline. They bottleneck to a point where their genetic diversity is so low, they begin to inbreed at a very high level that creates negative impacts. We can use our technology, which is primarily AI powered, to literally find lost genetic diversity in historic populations, identify those alleles, and bring them back into the species of today. So, de-extinction as a process, just quite quickly, is this idea that we can use ancient DNA tools to go and sequence the DNA of an extinct species, say a woolly mammoth, 100,000 years old, 1,000,000 years old, understand exactly what made a woolly mammoth, then sequence its closest living relatives, such as, in this case, Asian elephant. We then use our comparative genomics platform, which is called FormBio, which is an AI-powered software package that allows us to compare and contrast the genomes of species. Everywhere where those two species are the same, we can leave those areas unedited. Where they differ, the AI can help us predict what those alleles or what those genes are coding for. And then we can use an informed targeting practice to identify which editing targets we should have, and then using cutting-edge technologies such as CRISPR and related editing tools, we can make edits within the cell line of an elephant until that cell line becomes a mammoth cell line. Then using reproductive sciences, we can begin to make embryos. Cross-species surrogacy, we can implant those embryos into elephants who will one day give birth to a woolly mammoth. Additionally, in parallel to all that, we're also creating artificial womb technologies that will allow us to remove the need for cross-species surrogacy. So creating a biomedical device that can gestate an embryo from one cell all the way to birth, which in the case of a woolly mammoth is 23 months. So to date, we've launched this amazing, ambitious project to restore the woolly mammoth, the thylacine, which went extinct in 1936 from the island of Tasmania, and the dodo, which went extinct in 1650 from the island of Mauritius. However, we also made waves recently with the first announcement of a de-extinction event. The first species to ever go extinct and be restored has now occurred. In October 2024, we had the great fortune of welcoming these two individuals here. This is Romulus and Remus. They're the first dire wolves to walk this earth in 12,500 years. This event made quite the splash, as you might imagine. In the first week, we got about 200 billion media impressions. It was truly an amazing moment in history when we can look back to the moment in time when we can finally say that we have the tools to reverse extinction. We can once again begin to start to heal nature. We can focus on how we can use tools like this to help find ecosystems in need of species that have been lost, and begin to bring those species back to create the desired changes. In order to do that, we really need to focus on a suite of technologies that includes AI. So everything from gene sequencing and the AI-powered computational biology work that we do to multiplex gene editing and assisted reproduction are required in order to do this, which is really amazing because it also means that the de-extinction story does not end with de-extinction. It actually ends, or it begins maybe, with this. This is using the same tools that we use to restore the dire wolf from extinction are being used today to protect and expand the population of the world's most endangered wolf. Most Americans are unaware that that the American red wolf calls the U.S. home. It is the world's most endangered wolf. There are fewer than 20 in the wild. They are greatly threatened by genetic bottlenecking, and now we have the tools, the computational tools, the genetic editing tools, the reproductive science tools, to begin to help artificially enhance the genetic diversity of this species. So this is Nekakeda. Nekakeda is the world's first cloned wolf. She's the world's first cloned red wolf, and she represents the hope for the world's most endangered wolf species. Romulus and Remus joined this world in October 2024, just 1 month before they were born. Nekakeda was born, and she's now calling a large preserve in the northern U.S. a home, where she represents the world's greatest hope for the world's most endangered wolf. So with that in mind, we decided, as a company that's really good at raising funds, as a company that has a lot of amazing technologies, we also needed a foundation. So we've now launched the Colossal Foundation, which in our first year of existence, we've raised $75 million for conservation. The purpose of the foundation is really meant solely to focus on creating these global networks of conservation NGOs and government agencies that are working to prevent extinctions across the world, and use our emerging technologies to help enhance their work. So in just about a year and a half, we've announced more than 40 partnerships. As I said, we've raised $75 million, and we have an ambitious 10-year, $200 million plan to help dramatically slow the decline of biodiversity across the world. We also launched an Indigenous Council, which is really focused on how we can help leverage our tools to Indigenous communities around the world, not just here in North America, but we've also recently announced relationships with the Maori people of New Zealand and with the Aboriginal people of Tasmania. Once we launched this foundation, and actually a little before the foundation launched, we were beginning to identify that we had this amazing artificial intelligence core expertise within our team. We had these great developers, great coders that were able to help us power our computational biology team. But I also was going out in the field and working with my conservation partners and understanding that there were tools needed to help us overcome all of the challenges of nature and biodiversity loss. One of those tools is the ability to track and monitor animals remotely. Currently, this is in Samburu National Park in Kenya. Currently, the way that we track elephants there is we dart them from a helicopter, we put a collar on them, and that collar has a GPS beacon that we can track over time. That collar costs about $5,000 and lasts 3 years. If we can use the tools of AI to begin to help understand how AI can use computer vision tools to individually identify elephants, to even begin by locating elephants on a video, and then finding their GPS coordinates, eventually even pose estimation and behavior detection, we can begin to not only track elephants across space and time in a much more efficient way, which allows us to better manage landscapes and understand where they are, why they're using it. We can create much larger data sets for much cheaper, but we can also begin to understand why are they making the decisions they're making, which is really important when we talk about a resource-limited community that has to decide what landscapes should be protected, which corridors should remain protected. If we can understand why they make the decisions they make, we can begin to predict their movements and begin to create more efficient management plans. So with that in mind, we launched our first ever artificial intelligence project with a conservation partner, Save the Elephants, with really focus on a few things. First of all, using this angle from a drone, looking down to identify individual elephants, then begin to create some pose estimation capability so that we can understand where they're heading, who they're looking at, and where they're receiving their information from. And then, using a simple algorithm from the pose detection, we can even begin to label behaviors. This becomes a really efficient tool because typically the way Save the Elephants was doing this work is they would get a few hours of drone footage and manually annotate the entire thing, one elephant at a time. So if they had 3 hours and 10 elephants, it would take 30 hours to annotate that. Now in the same amount of time, we could do thousands of hours of film. We've also begun to apply these large recordings in a way that can understand the collective behavior of the herd. So now we can begin to detect where the elephants are looking when they're making decisions. We've also learned that elephants have something called a let's go call. What's really interesting about let's go is when one of the elephants of the herd says let's go, all the elephants turn the same direction and start moving. What I find even more interesting about that is there are some people within that herd, some elephants within that herd that will say let's go and nobody listens. So there's some interesting things that we can relate to probably as people, but we need to understand why is it that certain individuals of a herd have more influence on the herd than others, and how can we use that to help power decision making for conservationists. So that was a huge success, and we were really excited about it, and it allowed me to go back to my team and my board and get more money for AI for conservation. So since then, we've now also launched this project, which is in partnership with Samoa Conservation Society, BirdLife International, and the IUCN, which is focused on using bird call detectors to find species that are thought to be extinct. This bird in front of you is the tooth-billed pigeon. It was last seen 13 years ago, and at that time had a population estimate of fewer than 200 individuals. The island of Samoa is not large, but it is heavily forested, and the people of Samoa have some cultural ideologies that keep them out of the forest. So there's not a lot of researchers in Samoa that are in the forest looking for these birds. So we've helped overcome a lot of this by focusing on this sort of last-ditch effort to go find the last remaining tooth-billed pigeons, which if we can identify where the birds are, we can collect them from the wild, establish captive breeding programs, and begin to release them back to the wild and ensure that the species does not go extinct on our watch. So with only 5 minutes of a labeled call set that they gave us, Well, I should say, there's only 5 minutes of calls of this species ever. It's a very cryptic species that nobody has really seen. The 5 minutes of calls was from the 1980s at a zoo in Berlin. And over those 5 minutes, there were only 3 individual calls. So we had a very low data problem here. But our team was able to quickly begin to use a lot of amazing foundational models that we're able to help build and combine together in order to give us a tool to help not only denoise, but we could also add additional bird calls to it to help test this model. We pre-processed the audio data and used a bandpass filter to denoise this data, and then what was really important was that gave us these very clean tooth-billed pigeon calls. So by the end, we were able to tell the AI exactly what the tooth-billed pigeon was, but remember, these were only 3 calls across 5 minutes. We added additional calls of species related to the tooth-billed pigeon, and we were able to get these great clusters, which was very surprising to me how quickly this all came together because I'm not the AI guy. And then we tested that model, and quickly we found that we had about a 95% accuracy. So as soon as we had this test data set and we had the accuracy we were desiring, we deployed this to the wild, and in the first week, we had 47 pings across the island. Nobody had seen the bird in 13 years, and in 1 week, we detected the bird 47 times. We don't know how many individuals that was, but it's likely to be several individuals. So we've now since put that preprint online, and now it is an open source online repository where you can go and pick up that call detector that we've generated. We also, because all of this was happening in real time where they would collect data, transmit it back to us, we would process it locally in Dallas. And then created an interface for it. So now in real time, they can process the data locally. This is so now in real time, they're processing data. They're managing themselves. We've created capacity within the island of Samoa for them to take hold and manage the conservation of their species themselves. What's really great about this is we've already deployed it to several other lost bird species. It becomes a quickly scalable tool that can easily be optimized for other species. And understanding that birds represent one of the largest taxa of lost species, this is something we're really excited about, and we're going to see how many species we can rediscover in the next year. What's also great about this ability to scale this model is we have partners in Yellowstone National Park, including Yellowstone Forever, the Yellowstone Wolf Project, the Nez Perce Tribe, and an amazing for-profit company called Grizzly Systems, which has been trying to understand the language of wolves for years. We were able to use the same model that I just presented to be able to show, build a wolf call detector. The idea being that we need to collect hours and hours of wolf call data in order to begin to unlock the language of wolves. If we can unlock the language of a wolf, we can begin to explain the empathy and the emotional complexity of a wolf. It's not a mindless hunter that should be killed and run off of livestock, but as an animal that is an important part of our ecosystems. So this has been an incredible project that quickly took off, and by just using that tooth-billed pigeon call detector, we quickly optimized it, and we made our own model for this. What was really integral in this is we have a great partner in Grizzly Systems who we helped co-develop this microphone you see here. This is a 360-degree camera as well as a 360-degree microphone. It's got 4 directional microphones, and it has some AI on board to help filter out noise. So in conservation, we struggle a lot with trail cams or some, any of these sort of cameras that automatically take photos, and they end up taking a lot of pictures of grass. Anything that moves, they take pictures of people. This now allows us to be able to only take pictures and video and sound recordings of things that we care about. It'll quickly delete things that are not what we're looking for. It can also transmit real-time back to a central database where we can get real-time detection of wolf activity across Yellowstone National Park. So we've set up a 1,000 square kilometer array in Yellowstone National Park and in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem to begin to track wolves across space and time, to begin to unlock the language of wolves. This has been an incredible effort that without the partners of Yellowstone Wolf Project, we'd never be able to do. But I think what we will be seeing over the next few years is a lot more papers talking about what wolves are saying to each other. If you're familiar with Project SETI's work on the sperm whale, they're trying to unlock the language of sperm whales, and that's created this amazing investment rush into the sciences of marine mammals. We're hoping to try to create that same type of excitement around wolves, which have much more taboo. So our main goals here are really to understand the population dynamics. How are wolves using this space? How are they crossing paths? How did the packs change over time? And then identify individual calls. If we can find signature calls of wolves, we can begin to create censusing data that's much more accurate than the current ecological methods that are used. And so you might say, why is any of this important? Right? If we can understand languages, if we can find animals in the wild, how does that help with conservation? Which is a great question. Well, so using the vaquita as an example here, and this is the last thing I'll talk to you about, this is a project we're launching right now. The vaquita comes from the Gulf of California, the northern tip. It's the world's most endangered marine mammal. There's fewer than 13 left in the world. They're threatened by unfortunate illegal fishing activity. You see this massive decline over time. Just in the last 30 years, we've lost 99% of the population. If we can begin to use the same sort of acoustical array that we're using with wolves, which we're beginning to deploy in the Gulf of California, we can begin to locate this elusive species. We can begin to census the species in a way that tells us real numbers, not just random reports from fishermen when they see them. If we can locate them and we reliably know where they are, we can begin to track them, and we can begin to take drastic effort, like try to sample them. You can use remote darting systems that as they surface, a drone, another AI-powered drone, fires a dart. That dart takes a small skin plug out of them, and the dart floats. We pick up the dart, we're able to then create genome sequencing. We're able to bank tissues. We're able to really understand what's out there. Then using the amazing tools of de-extinction, we can begin to recreate vaquitas in human care. We can begin to use cross-species surrogacy to help it quickly scale the population. And we can even use gene editing tools to help address major issues that are likely to exist in them, such as genetic bottlenecking. Once we use our assisted reproductive tools and we establish that amazing captive population, we can then begin to use our tools in the wild to help remove the forces of extinction, help address illegal fishing, help address habitat destruction, help track vaquita across their habitat, and then begin to put vaquita back into the wild and help supplement their population. So that's one example that I hope shows why de-extinction is conservation. I get the question a lot is, why does your company not focus on conservation? Why are they a de-extinction company? I actually think it's a flawed construct to assume that de-extinction and conservation are not intrinsically linked. So as we focus on foundational conservation and rewilding efforts, we can use de-extinction as a way to drive and push technologies down into these traditional, conventional methods while we work on the more progressive, future-forward type of projects. So by using amazing tools that are almost all powered by AI, we're quickly able to begin to help address not just the de-extinction, reverse extinction, but address the biodiversity crisis, help stop extinction. So thank you very much.